We have a world of people pleasers and narcissists that make up the vast majority. Narcissistic personality disorder is going to be found to at least be 50% of the population because it forms so easy. The only thing that causes the formation of narcissistic personality disorder is the activation of a fight or flight reaction in infancy or prior to language, particularly prior to the cognitions associated with the understanding of me. And so what happens is that if a baby that is designed to be protected by the caregiver is in an environment with hostility, loud music even, or you see videos where people are doing things to traumatize babies. Like I posted some on my YouTube where it was like this real funny viral video where like mothers were putting this little dancing cactus in front of little teeny babies, like babies that they can't even walk yet. And so the baby's just sitting there, and then this little dancing thing is in front of them, and then it goes, ah, and it scares them, and it terrifies them, and they're looking at the mother, and there's nothing to protect them. And so when they have a fight or flight reaction, you see, the fight or flight reaction is not itself an intellectual process. It is only neurological. What it is that one other area of the brain associated with the autonomic nervous system has both efferent and afferent neurons that go throughout the brain. Typically, when we think about afferent is sensory neurons, meaning like proprioceptors in your joints, muscle spindles in your muscles, Golgi tendon organs in your tendons, pressure receptors in your skin, temperature, all the things that go into, the genesis of your perception of the outside world. Your vision, for example, the eye, rods, cones, and taking that information through the optic nerve, all of that, works to do something. And what it's doing is it's helping generate the formation of reality. And so your brain is generating the architecture of a three-dimensional representation of the world outside of yourself. But that representation is the only basis through which animals experience living. The dog opens its eyes. It exists as the view of reality from the vantage point of dog. And human beings are no different. That was what enlightenment restored. That is the kingdom of God. For Jesus, that is what consciousness is. We lost our connection to consciousness due to a malformation of the fight or flight mechanism, where with spoken language, we created the concept of me. The concept of me forced a segregation from our experience of reality and our experience of ourself within that reality. So the reality was ourself. And then we created a secondary self that we had to embody with a talking voice that ends up becoming a distraction, because the sympathetic nervous system with the proverbial me causes the first arbitrary fight or flight reaction of a child's life to create the genesis of malformations where the afferent and efferent neurological activity of the fight or flight system overlap as the same exact pathway that is the result of this arbitrary reaction is also saved as the source of the reaction. Something is wrong here is simply bringing words to describe the experience of the initiation of a sympathetic response. An animal can be aroused from a deep sleep to inspect their environment, thinking there's something wrong. The fight or flight mechanism is part of the sympathetic reaction, but the fight or flight state is a transformation from something's wrong here when a specific predatory threat is identified. An expanded consciousness wakes the animal up, and it becomes hypersensitive to all sensory stimuli, from olfactory to auditory to visual. The rabbit is inspecting its immediate environment to detect what it was that woke it up. It's in a state of alert and fear, But you see, when it sees a fox hiding over there, its consciousness will collapse to envelop the fox. The rabbit becomes oblivious to the entire reality around it, and fear prioritizes any other emotions, and it becomes oblivious because the sympathetic nervous system has efferent neurons that go throughout the entire brain and block all perceptions related to anything not pertinent to this experiential threat. The same mechanism explains psychopathies, where somebody could hurt someone and black out, or people trampling each other in a state of fear. The fight or flight mechanism involuntarily collapses the consciousness of an animal so that this animal does not have other instinctive behaviors activated during this event, because animals do not understand the world around them. Animals eat because they're hungry, they mate because they're driven to, and they run because they're afraid. Emotions provide context to the external experience of animals and humans alike. And emotions have an important role to accurately characterize the moment in which the animal exists so that they make accurate decisions based on what it is that they're experiencing within their three-dimensional world. We're given two eyes and ears so our brain can form a three-dimensional rendition of reality with stereo effect, so that if you're sitting in a large crowd, you can take in the murmur. But because you have two ears, the timing of sound from different locations hits each eardrum at a different time, and your brain will use that information to approximate the location of different sounds, enabling you to listen to a conversation over here, a conversation over there, take in the whole murmur of the crowd, focus on the game. And same with your eyes, depth perception. Now, the process of generating this perfected external experience for humans is so good that when we generated me and segregated ourselves from the experience of that external reality within our mind, we forced a separation. Now, this notion of me contaminated our first fight or flight reaction. Noticing the emotions and changes within me, the human turned their attention to themselves when the animal turned their attention to outside of themselves. And so as the rabbit looked out and found a fox, the child looked in and found abandonment. The child looked in and found the fear of being not enough. The child looked in and found confusion. They found the dissociation normal to the fight or flight reaction. And when they started finding and noticing things, they escalated the reaction to completely dissociate themselves from reality. The proverbial Adam and Eve moment happened at the age of 5 for most people. And this created a secondary cognitive function called analyzing. And so as you thought something was wrong with me, the emotions of the first fight or flight, something's wrong here, transformed into me, and everything that you observed as a result of this reaction continued to stimulate more of the reaction till you reached the full-fledged fear of imminent death. And then you trapped your parents within that paradigm. And the only thing you could think to do as you disconnected yourself fully from reality, unable to understand the world around you in a state of confusion, was to figure it out and become perfect so that this fear state never happened again. And so what ended up happening is all the emotional reactions that are resultant from the fight or flight were also perceived within the system as the cause of the fight or flight. And so the cause and the effect are the same thing, creating a positive feedback loop that says, when I feel that there's something wrong, there's something wrong. When I feel like I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. And I need to fix it outside of myself. And so now these emotions, when emotions contextualize reality, if reality was a snow cone that's blank, emotions would be the flavors. And so when abandonment is your flavor, when failure is your flavor, when rejection is your flavor, you poison your mind by projecting that onto reality. And so the world of enlightenment through meditation was the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, turning off the cognitive blockades of a lifelong affliction of fight or flight reactions that were inescapable. And so, even in the Bible, the book of Genesis speaks about the tree of life versus the tree of knowledge of good and evil, where the serpent is depicted as the voice of the mind, the deceiver, the same thing that Jesus conquered through, his practice of fasting and 40 days of battling Satan in his mind, amplifying the voice through fasting. And the voice tried to tell him to get on top of the church, aka ego. And so here's a man that found the truth, found consciousness, the source of our own existence within himself, and came back to tell the story. But that's all it was. Nothing more. Consciousness itself. Consciousness is not afforded to ego or me. Nope.